Hello, and thank you for joining us. The White House brushing off concerns over President Biden's age as he turns 81 today. But recent polling and the latest gaffe by the president are again raising questions. Joining us now is Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris.
Good evening to you, Steve. So as President Biden turns 81 today, he's joking about his age while pardoning this year's Thanksgiving turkeys named Liberty and Belle. But he also seemingly confused Britney Spears, who's not on tour, with Taylor Swift, who's on tour in Brazil. Watch.
It's my birthday today, and they can actually sing birthday music. I just want you to know it's difficult turning 60. Now, just to get here, Liberty and Belle had to beat some tough odds in competition. Even this harder than getting a ticket to the Renaissance tour or Britney's tour. She's down in, it's kind of warm in Brazil right now.
What do you?
President Biden, who's the oldest commander-in-chief in U.S. history, frequently jokes about his own age, and he has also responded to concerns over his age by saying, "Watch me." The White House today also defending Biden's age by drawing attention instead to his legislative record and experience. Watch.
It's not about age, it's about the president's experience. That's what we believe. And it's, as they say, the proof is in the pudding, right? The president has used his experience to pass more bipartisan legislation in recent time than any other president. That's just.
And despite the White House's defense, recent polling continues to show warning signs for President Biden's re-election campaign. A recent poll by the New York Times and Siena College, for example, shows that 71% of battleground state voters think that Biden is too old to run again for re-election, and that includes 51% of Democratic respondents. Steve.
So, Iris, as President Biden turns 81 today, his main 2024 rival, former President Trump, isn't that far behind at 77. Is the age factor here affecting both of them in the polls from what you see?
That's a great question. So a September poll by ABC News and the Washington Post shows that 3/4 of Americans think that Biden is too old to run again, while about half of Americans think the same way for Trump. So other polls have shown similar results, which is that many Americans, more Americans are more concerned about Biden's age than they are concerned about Trump's age. Meanwhile, both Biden's and Trump's campaigns have used the age factor and the other candidates' gaffes to target one another. Steve.
Iris Tao reporting from the White House. Thank you. And former President Trump getting several legal victories recently, such as being able to stay on the ballot in multiple states and having a gag order paused. He's also getting some high-profile endorsements. Joining us now to discuss these developments, we have senior Trump advisor Kash Patel. Kash Patel, thank you so much for joining.
Hey, Steve, it's great to be back with you.
Great to have you, Kash. Former President Trump, he's been racking up some pretty big legal wins, whether, being able to stay on the ballot in Colorado and a few other states. Now we have the prospect of some of these gag orders being lifted. What do you make of the trajectory of some of these recent rulings?
Well, some of these recent rulings are actually finally starting to follow the law, which I think for any American citizen is a good victory, is a great victory, because we've seen so much of the weaponized system of justice. Now, the Colorado judge, where I was actually one of the lead witnesses for President Trump, she even couldn't remove President Trump from the ballot because it's completely unconstitutional. But she couldn't do it without having her jab at him by finding somehow he committed insurrection. She doesn't even have the authority to do that. So you still see the lawfare continue because they want it to be in the mainstream media. They want the political headline, Donald Trump committed insurrection, but remains on the ballot, as if the two are somehow inextricably intertwined, and that judge had a foothold to make that decision. She did not. But these rulings are starting to show Americans that we can have some faith in the legal system again. We got a long way to go, a long, long way to go. The gag order, the one in D.C., is up on appeal currently, so we're waiting for the final ruling there. The New York gag order was temporarily lifted, so we shouldn't even be litigating these issues, is where we need to get back to, but this is where we are.
Speaking of January 6th, and with regard to the gag order here in D.C. with the election case, it was a pretty significant Friday afternoon news dump, if you will, with the J6 footage being released. What is the significance of this footage, and what story do you think it ultimately tells?
Well, one, this footage should have been out a long time ago, so I'm thankful that it's out now for every American and every person in the world to scour. What it is evidence of anybody who's charged with a crime on January 6th. They should have had access to this entire bandwidth of footage for years. And what it does for the legal cases that are on appeal right now, like we know there's two major appellate court cases going to the U.S. Supreme Court for consideration about January 6th. Do these videos affect the underlying convictions? They might. We don't know the answer to that. And when you're talking about the, whether or not Donald Trump committed insurrection, when you look at these videos, at least the hours of footage that I've watched, you see Capitol police officers hugging people who walked into the Capitol on that day. You see a lot of peaceful activity, and you don't see anyone going there at the behest of Donald Trump to commit violence and overthrow the United States government. That's what insurrection is. So they're pretty powerful because like that old sportscaster used to say, let's play the videotape. There's nothing better.
To your point, Kash, the January 6th Select Committee has come under fire in part because, the public says that they cherry-picked a lot of some of the worst images. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's floating the idea of setting up another January 6th committee. What do you think of this idea? What do you think it would possibly prove or bring out?
Well, look, as the guy who was the first one subpoenaed by the prior January 6th committee and put through that process, I know what it's like intimately. And what they've done here is akin to a prosecutor withholding evidence of innocence, like they did in, say, Russiagate or Mike Flynn's case, or so many other corrupt DOJ actions where we only find out on appeal that they, for whatever reason, knew about exculpatory evidence and hid it. And this is what the January 6th committee did. Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and everyone else on that committee, Thompson and Bernie Thompson and everybody else knew about this information and withheld it from the public so they could have their campaign, their disinformation campaign narrative in the media, quote unquote, Donald Trump commits insurrection. Now, if Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Republicans want to stand up another committee, I'm all for that if they utilize the full power of congressional subpoenas like the prior January 6th committee did, hold people in contempt of Congress when they violate those subpoenas, and get the DOJ and FBI to produce the other documents that we still have yet to see in and around January 6th, specifically what happened to the DNC pipe bomb case. Not one arrest 3 years later by the FBI, which is unheard of when a Democratic National Committee headquarters spot is threatened with an explosive device. So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and we now know the January 6th committee from before was extremely selective, just like some of these partisan judges we're seeing in their orders during their rulings in the Donald Trump cases.
Yeah, there really is a lot of potential things to unpack with that. Trump, lastly, I know you're busy, Kash. Trump's also seeing some significant endorsements from within the GOP. Today you have Senator Marshall endorsing him, which is significant given the fact that Senate leadership like Mitch McConnell, it's not an easy decision to make. One might say you have Governor Greg Abbott in that environment. Governor Greg Abbott of Texas endorsing the former president over the weekend. Here's the Texas governor over the weekend.
Who's going to restore world peace as opposed to this outbreak of warfare under Joe Biden? We need Donald J. Trump back as our president of the United States of America.
What do you make of this endorsement?
I think it's fantastic, and Governor Abbott feels it probably more so than anyone that he needs a commander-in-chief to assist securing the border. Texas has the longest border in the U.S. on the south with Mexico, where we have 225,000 illegals crossing a month, 10 million total in the Biden administration. It is a crime that is felt throughout the country, but Texas has the first wave impacts because of its geographic location. So I think it's strategic. I think it's the right decision for Governor Abbott to endorse Donald Trump. I also think that these other senators and congressmen and women that you're talking about coming up with endorsements for President Trump are listening to the will of the people, their constituents, because Donald Trump has broken through. He is the presumptive Republican nominee. I don't believe anyone is going to even come close to overtaking Donald Trump. And so these elected officials are making the politically astute decision to say, if he's going to be on the head of the Republican ticket, then I'm going to need to be with him to help get legislation done, to help tamp down crime, to secure the border, to make my constituents happy, and the like.
Kash Patel, really appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Have a great day and happy Thanksgiving.
Millions of Americans are hitting the roads and taking to the skies. This as thunderstorms are impacting parts of the U.S. today, but early travelers can expect to avoid major disruptions. This holiday season is expected to be the busiest ever for travel, with the peak hitting on Tuesday and Wednesday. NTD's Melina Wisecup is at Reagan National Airport with more.
A record number of travelers for this holiday season. Around 50,000 flights are scheduled for the day before Thanksgiving this week. Around 30 million passengers are expected to be screened through airport security checkpoints between last Friday and next Tuesday.
Every year we go down south to New Orleans and have some good Southern food.
So I'm going back to see family. My granddaughter's birthday is on Thanksgiving, and I'm expecting a new grandbaby any day now.
Data shows that ticket prices are supposed to be around 13% cheaper this year, but passengers tell us they have only seen a minor difference.
They were cheaper than if we went tomorrow.
Much cheaper.
So it's pretty average. I think it's still a little pricey.
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit cheaper than it has been in past years, so that's nice.
And while TSA says it's bolstered up air traffic control staff and pressured airlines to avoid the same mistakes as last year, the agency tells travelers to still be prepared for bad weather.
There is some bad weather expected that could affect Thanksgiving travel.
This bag is full of like coats and hats.
Going back in, I think it's supposed to get a little bit cooler than it was when we took off today, so definitely worried about winter storms rolling in at some point.
And if your flight is canceled or significantly delayed and you choose not to rebook, the Secretary of Transportation reminds you that you are entitled to a full cash refund. Reporting from the Ronald Reagan Airport here in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.